Okay, I'm definitely not saying the enemy of my enemy is my friend, because God knows that groyper, incel, literal Nazi Nick Fuentes is not my friend. But he said something. He said something the other day that just, I was a little bit shocked and also pleasantly surprised by it.
Don't vote. Do not vote in the midterms. The Republicans have to lose. They have to lose. They have to crash and burn. A cleansing fire is the only thing that will save us. It cannot be fixed. Fuck them. Fuck Trump. Fuck MAGA. Fuck all this stuff. It can't be fixed. If it could have been fixed, it would have been fixed in 2025, but it wasn't. They made every mistake. Liberation Day, disaster. Doge, disaster. Big Beautiful Bill, disaster. Epstein files, disaster. Iran, disaster. The personnel, Mike Waltz, disaster. Ratcliffe, disaster. Rubio, disaster. Pam Bondi, disaster. All self-inflicted. Trump personnel, Trump policy, Trump strategy, Trump playbook. We tried it your way. It didn't work. Fuck you. Now we don't vote. That's the message. Seriously. Can't blame anybody else. Bad advice, bad advisors, Biden's economy. Enough already. It didn't work. We're not voting. I'm staying home, and you know what? I hope the Democrats impeach him. I hope the Democrats impeach all of them. I hope they indict everybody. I hope they depose and compel the release of documents, and I hope they find all the criminal behavior, and I hope it destroys the GOP. I hope it creates a crisis for the GOP so severe that they never recover. And then I hope we get a fucking Nazi to run in 28. And I mean that metaphorically. I don't mean that literally. I hope we get a fucking fascist to run in 28 to burn the GOP down as a dark horse and win the presidency as a right-wing radical. That is my hope. That is my playbook.
Okay, I was vibing with that for a while until the end there. Yeah, but on brand messaging for Nick Fuentes, groyper, incel, Nazi. I love the fact that he was like, I don't mean a literal Nazi, I mean a metaphorical. No, you don't. You mean a literal Nazi. But he wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong with any of the things he said before he got to that abhorrent bit there at the end. The Trump regime has been riddled with unforced errors. They done fucked up all over the place. They're deeply unpopular. And we know that a fascist cannot cement their power as long as there is a vocal, active, engaged, sustained resistance movement. And what we're seeing in the United States is the more Trump is in office, the more terrible shit he does, the more people he activates for the resistance. It is that backlash effect. And so we're not seeing people lay down. We're not seeing people acquiesce. We're not seeing people allow fascism to steamroll over all of us and our communities and our Constitution. We're seeing quite the opposite. And so everything they've tried to do is backfiring on them. Their regime is full of a bunch of incompetent boobs who fuck up left and right and left. Pam Bondi she just humiliated herself. Kash Patel has done likewise. These are all folks who just, God, they're so embarrassing. And not only embarrassing to sensible people like us on the political left, but like to people on the right. Pam Bondi pissed off so many people on the right. What's happening with the Epstein file cover-up blowing up in their face, with bombing Iran, with fucking up the economy, with Donald Trump's tariffs, like everything they do creates a backlash. It doesn't advance their agenda. It just galvanizes people to resist. Right now we're rolling up on the midterms and Republicans are going to get their asses handed to them. And their efforts to cheat are just so obvious and are pissing off even more people. And we're seeing how that is likely not going to end well. It's not likely. It's going to end poorly for them, because it's up to us, the people, to make sure that we vote and then we defend the results of the election. And we're all preparing to do that, right? We are all mobilized. Nobody is staying home on election day. We're voting come hell or high water, and then we will defend the results of the election come hell or high water. There will be a peaceful transfer of power in Congress. It will be happening. We will accept nothing less. I am more optimistic now than I was a year ago. It's more than that. Every week, I'm a little bit more optimistic as I'm watching more and more people find their courage, more and more people make real sacrifices, as I'm watching communities come together and pool their power and figure out how to organize, right? And push back on a local level, on a federal level, in any way that they can. I am so encouraged by everything that I'm seeing. Yeah, of course, there are news stories that really that really get to me, right? There are moments where the propaganda of the regime kind of works on me a little bit, and I have to take a step back, and I have to regulate myself, and I have to go look for the helpers, right? It's not trite, that Mr. Rogers quote that like when times are tough, when there are difficult times, you look for the helpers, and that helps reorient you, right? The regime wants you to think that everybody is terrible and awful and evil, or they're complicit with terrible, awful evilness, and that's not true. Most people are good. So many people. Like I think when I read news stories that just take me down to a low place, I go and I search up something on what people in Minnesota are doing, and then immediately, right, I'm right back up, or I look at some of the local organizing work here in Portland, and same thing. I'm like, oh yeah, there's good people everywhere. But that brings me to something that Nick Fuentes said at the end, where he said they were going to run a literal Nazi fascist, metaphorical Nazi, literal fascist, whatever, okay, in 2028, and that they think he'll get elected, and then they will finally have their vision of how they want America to be, which is, by the way, Nick thinks that women shouldn't vote. Right? As an incel who has really obvious mommy issues, he thinks that women are like the greatest threat to the groyper movement.
Women get sent to the gulags first, obviously. Our number one political enemy is women. They are the ones that are hurting the fertility rate. They are the ones making us sympathetic to poor people, which are also brown people. Okay, not all poor people are brown, but most brown people are poor. So women are making us sympathetic to poor people, aka brown people. Women are making us sympathetic to George Floyd. Women are the reason that the fertility rate is low because they're getting educated and they attack every man as a rapist and a pedophile. They're henpecking and controlling all the men. So just like Hitler imprisoned Jews, we have to do the same thing with women.
In case you were fooled by the first video into thinking that maybe Nick Fuentes said something that was a little bit common sense, or that he might have a decent bone in his body. No, he's a vile, vile human being. That man would put millions of women in a gulag before he'd go to therapy to figure out his mommy issues. I always think it's hilarious when deeply closeted incel men, or maybe they're not even that deeply closeted incel men, they care about the fertility rate. They blame women for not having a high enough fecundity. Okay, babe. Okay, thank you, incel, for your insight about shit that has nothing to do with you. Okay, I have a point to make here before I go off on incels and the great replacement theory. Anyway, okay. So the thing is that Nick Fuentes thinks he's going to run some literal fascist in 2028, and that they're going to take over everything, right? That Donald Trump failed, and that Democrats are going to take control of the House and the Senate in the midterms, and then they will sweep in 2028, and a fascist will just like take it all over and burn it all down. And I think this is something that we need to be really aware of. When there's any kind of pro-democracy movement, when there's any kind of resistance movement against an authoritarian, you have to be aware that something has to come after. You have to know what that something is. You have to be planning for it now. Because what we see in other countries, when their focus has been, let's stop the bad guy, let's stop the tyrant, let's stop the guy who wants to make himself a king, and you don't have a plan for what comes after, it creates a power vacuum. That terrible, awful people who are likely worse than the guy you were toppling, those terrible, awful, cruel, put women in gulags people, they are going to exploit that power vacuum and attempt to seize control. So not only do we have to be fighting against fascism and be like the No Kings movement, but we also have to be a movement that stands for something. We have to be yes for something. What kind of America do we want? This is what I'm always asking people. What kind of reforms do you want? What will give you and your family a good quality of life? What would justice look like in this country? What would it look like to have policies that work for the working class? You want Supreme Court reform? You want Citizens United overturned? You want a wealth cap in this country? You want universal health care? Sky's the limit. What do you dream of? What do you dream of? Because you have to envision the kind of democracy that we need to have in the future in order to get it. Otherwise, if we don't have a plan for what comes after and we aren't prepared to step in and make sure that the people have the power, you get folks like Nick Fuentes who want to step into the power vacuum and take over. So just be aware. Just be aware of that. One, Nick's not wrong. Everything the regime does has been an embarrassment to them, and they're failing in so many ways. They're fucking up royally. But also, as they continue to crumble, we have to be prepared to institute democracy, and we have to be aware of who else is in the margins looking to exploit that power vacuum.